Hey guys, it's Alex, and I'm here with another tag video, which is my second of the month, but I figured it's the end of the year, so we're gonna go with it. I'm sure I missed a few months in there. Today I'm going to be doing the book postscript tag. It was originally created by mementomori, but I saw it on Bookish's channel, and I will be linking both of those down below. This is essentially just a 2018 wrap-up, and since I'm not doing a wrap-up video, I'm going to do my best and worst list next month, in a few weeks, but I'm not doing an official 2018 wrap-up video, so this is sort of taking the place of that. The first question is the longest book you read this year and the book that took you the longest to finish. And I have two different answers for these. The longest book I read this year is actually the one I'm currently reading, although I'm hoping to be very much done with it by the time this video goes up, and that is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I haven't read a lot of long books this year, and I think this one is like 570 pages or something around there. I'm not 100% sure this is the longest, but I didn't really have a way to check apart from like going through all the books I've read this year and checking the page counts, so we're going with this. The book that took me the longest to finish is probably an audiobook, but I decided to go with a physical book just because I only listen to my audiobooks in the car, so how long they take me to finish just depends on how many hours the audiobook is and how many hours I spend in my car. So the physical book that took me the longest to finish was Killed, Great Journalism Too Hot to Print, edited by David Wallace. This was actually a really good book that I gave 4 stars, and I only finished it this month, but it took me over a month to read. Not because it was bad, it was just one of those books that I didn't want to read more than like 1 to 2 articles at a time. It's newspaper articles, so some of them are quite short, and if I only read like a 5-page article and an 11-page article in one day, I didn't go through it very fast, but very much worth the read, just kind of a slow one. Question 2 is a book you read in 2018 that was outside your comfort zone, and for this I'm going with The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I mostly read realistic fiction and nonfiction. I don't tend to pick up a lot of fantasy or sci-fi or speculative fiction in any way. I can do historical, I can do nonfiction, but I like it to be realistic. And especially when it tends towards like the weird fantasy that's sort of like close to magical realism or urban fantasy. But I thought this book was really beautiful. I gave it 4 stars. It was one of the books that I could definitely tell there were points I struggled with just because I don't read a lot of fantasy, and especially fantasy like this. But overall, very much worth it for me. Question number 3 is how many books did you reread in 2018? I reread 15, plus I'm currently rereading one, but there's a big asterisk beside that number. I like to listen to audiobooks in my car, but my reading comprehension on audiobooks is honestly so bad that there's not much point in listening to a book for the first time. It kind of ruins the experience. So I reread a lot of books as audiobooks in my car throughout the year. There's pretty much always an audiobook running in my car, which allows me to get through more than I otherwise would. Physical books that I reread in 2018, I got through 3, which is fewer than I would have liked. Question 4 is your favorite reread of 2018, and that is One of Those Hideous Books Where the Mother Dies by Sonia Sones. This kind of surprised me. I picked it up because I wanted a really quick, like, fun read, and I wanted something that I knew I would enjoy because I was sort of like just in a mood where I was like not feeling like anything else. And this is a novel in verse, so it's even shorter than it originally looks. It's such a quick read. I read this, I think, for the first time when I was in middle school or high school, and it doesn't look like the kind of thing I'd enjoy. Just because it's about a girl whose mother dies, and then she goes to Hollywood to live with her estranged movie star father. And it's kind of a strange book, but I really, really enjoy it. I love it. I gave it 5 stars upon reread, and it's just one of those books that's so lovely, and it makes me so emotional. Like, it makes me laugh and it makes me cry, and there aren't a lot of books that can do both. It's just, I sit down, I read it in like an hour and a half, and it's a good time. Question number 5 is a book you read in 2018 that you look forward to rereading in the future, and I've actually already reread 2 books that I read for the first time in 2018. I first read As You Wish by Carrie Elwes as a physical book, and then I reread it as an audiobook like 2 weeks later because I really wanted to listen to it as an audiobook because Carrie Elwes was the narrator. but I don't do well listening to books the first time on audiobook. So I read that, and I'm currently listening to The Unseen World as an audiobook. That's my current reread. And I read that back in February. But for books that I do plan to reread in the future, like, I'll probably reread both of those again at some point. But I do plan to pick up Sadie, the audiobook, because I read the physical book because of my reading comprehension issues with audiobooks. But I've heard the audiobook is absolutely amazing, and judging by the way this read, I gave it 5 stars as a physical book, but I'm really, really excited to pick up the audiobook sometime early next year, hopefully. Question number 6 is your favorite short story or novella that you read in 2018. And I don't think I read any short stories or novellas. I was trying to think back, and I don't think I did, but I did really enjoy Travels with Basim by Mike Sager, which was in Killed. It was a newspaper article that never got printed, or a magazine article, I believe, about Palestinians living in Israel in the 80s, I think. And it was really interesting and really well done, and honestly, one of my favorite pieces of the year. Like, it was that specific, I gave this book 4 stars overall, but that specific article was definitely a 5-star read for me, and it was amazing. It was like 50 pages long, which was a lot for this book. It was definitely the longest article in this book, but it was worth every single page, and it was one of the few in here that I couldn't understand why anyone would not want to publish that in their magazine, because it was amazing and fascinating, and left me really wanting to learn more about Israel. Question 7 is Mass Appeal, a book you liked and would recommend to a wide variety of readers. And for this, I definitely have to go with The Unseen World by Liz Moore. I thought this book was so incredibly well done and one of my favorite books of the year. I'm currently rereading it, but I want to reread the physical book again at some point, possibly next year. It was so good. I've sent it to a couple of people as a Christmas gift, which they should have received it by now and opened it so everyone should know. But it was so good, and it's one of those books that it's an adult book intended for an adult audience, but most of the book takes place when Ada, the main character, is in her teenage years, so I feel like it would work really well for a young adult audience too. It skews towards literary fiction as well, but it's very easy to follow, and I think people who read just for like enjoyment and an interesting story would also really like it. And it's historical fiction, but not too heavy on the historical fiction. It's set in the 80s that I think people who don't really enjoy historical fiction would still like it. And it's just one of those books that, like, I can't see why anyone wouldn't like it. It was just so well done, and I feel like it's one of those that everyone should like it, and everyone should read it and love it, because I really think most people would. Question 8 is Specialized Appeal, a book you like but wouldn't recommend to just anyone. And that definitely has to be Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is a Japanese literary fiction novel about an adult woman who works in a convenience store and has worked there for, I believe, 18 years. She's in her 30s, she's not married, she doesn't have children, and she kind of has almost sociopathic tendencies in, like, the way she views the world. And it's a very strange book. I loved it, but it's one of those books that I want everyone else to read it and love it how I loved it, but I'm also very aware that you have to be interested in kind of a very specific thing, and I feel like a lot of people would not be super interested in this book, and they just think it was weird and give it a hard pass. So I wouldn't say just anyone to read it, but it's one I definitely want to recommend. Question 9 is Reflect on your year as a bookish content creator. And I came back to Booktube this year. I started my Booktube channel in 2017, and I did it for several months. More than several months. I did my channel for about 6 months. From about April to the end of August, I was doing my channel. And then I had some reasons, and I left my channel. And then my computer died in like September or October, so I never got to come back. And I didn't get a new computer until May of this year, which was when I restarted my YouTube channel. So that was a good thing of this year. And I also think this year I've gotten into a good rhythm with my channel and the way I post my content. I don't stick with my current format all the time 100%. I do take some breaks. I got sick and took like 3 or 4 weeks off earlier in like October. But I've been posting vlogs on Sundays, top 5 videos on Saturdays, miscellaneous videos on Tuesdays, and then reviews on Thursdays. And I think that format has really worked for me. I really like that schedule. It gives me a variety of content, and I do post more or less some weeks, just depending on how much I feel like filming and what ideas I have and like what's going on in my life. But I think discovering that that works for me has really helped because I've stuck with that pretty well since I started doing that in July, I think. So I'm very happy with that. I've also made a lot more friends this year. Like, people sent me presents for Christmas, which, like, it's not about that. It's just that I've made friends with enough people who would want to do that. And the first time I was here, like the 6 months or however long that I spent on my channel, I didn't really make friends like that. I was posting content and was like commenting and had mutuals and stuff, but like no one that I'd really consider a friend. And I feel like this year I've actually talked to a lot more people and done more buddy reads and participated in more readathons and other events, and that's been really fun. Like, I just think I'm doing a lot better with Booktube this year, and I'm getting more out of it. And like, yes, I'm getting more subscribers, and that's great. And like, I'd be lying if I didn't say that get excited every time I get a new subscriber, and I do have subscriber goals, but it's not just about that. It's about like making friends with people and like talking to people. Like, I do a lot more like talking and chatting and like just being casual with people than I did the first time. So I think that's made me a lot happier this year. I've also gotten better with my reviews. I still have issues with some of them, and like I watch them back and I'm like, oh no, I left out like these 3 things that I wanted to say. And you know, I think that's always going to be a thing. But I've sort of gotten into a rhythm with my reviews and like how I film them and how I post them and like doing them for almost every book I read, which has been really, really great. And I don't know, I'm just a lot happier with my channel and my content. I feel like I've finally figured out like what I'm doing on here, and I think some people like it, some people don't, which is fine. But I don't know. I like what I'm doing this year, and I feel like I don't really have any plans to change what I'm doing for next year, which I think is the sign that you're doing something good if you don't want to change anything. And then finally tag some other bookish content creators, and for this I'd like to tag Kylie Graham, the Hyped Up Hufflepuff, and Books with Nahid. I'd be super interested to see you guys do this tag if you want to, no pressure. And of course anyone else who wants to do this, you're absolutely welcome to and say I tagged you, that's fine. No one tagged me, I just did it because I wanted to, and that's the way I live my life. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all again soon.